Welcome to the Pink Room, a space for real talk by real women about the real issues of our day.
As minorities, we're not only your day laborers. We're not only the ones that clean your houses or your hotels, right? We are human beings that have capacity to be part of every area of this country.
Our strategy needs to be to get into these political offices.
Every election, every seat, every office.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Teresa, if I would just like to say, I don't consider myself a minority. If the world wants to see us as minorities, because we are actually the majority, but if they want to see us as minorities, then call us the super minority.
There you go. Okay. Yeah.
People started to post some microaggressions that they were experiencing from their professors.
Wow.
And hearing so many perspectives, they're like, you have to do something. If I have the resource, I'll do well as well. I'll do well just as well as others do. Don't make things easier for me. I just want the resource. That's all. And I think that's the misconception, that they think that we want handouts. We don't want handouts. We just want what the others get. That's it. Give us what you give others, and we will do just as well.
Excellent. Ashley.
As long as you can ensure that one group of people in this country have access to good education,
Right.
Another group does not have access to adequate education,
Right.
you basically guarantee that the group that has less access to good education, then remain the sickest people in our system. And so you have the conflation of several policies, or the absence of policies, that basically create and sustain the perfect storm in this country.
That's not where your affirmation is going to come from.
Right.
Humans fail us all the time. It is not in someone else. You can't find in someone else what you cannot find first within yourself. What entryways were there for someone else to come in and feed you false narratives? You have to build up those fortresses first. And when I say fortresses, I don't mean walls to block people out. I mean confident within yourself to know that you can look in the mirror and say to the mirror, Latoya, you are loved. I love you. I love you. You are beautiful.
Start your watch parties. Cast the Pink Room on your HD TVs. Post your comments in the chat. This space is yours too.
We want to say hello to everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Pink Room. I have the co-hostesses of the Pink Room here, Dr. Tricia P. and Shonda Robertson. How's everyone doing?
Good.
This has been a crazy week, I'm sure, for many. We're going to ask, we're going to welcome comments. We're going to invite you to please start your watch parties on YouTube, on Facebook. We invite you to be part of this very, very important discussion that we're going to have today. And Arlene, good to see you, Arlene. Yes, good to see you. So we're going to start with our check-in. We always do the check-in where we talk about how we're doing things to self-care. And today it's all about aromatherapy. We want you to share the name of scents, fragrances from particular candles, oils, lotions, etc. that relax or bring you joy. Just put it in the chat if there's a certain candle or a certain oil that you use, or something that you do use that has particular scent, fragrance, and it brings you joy or it makes you relax. Just share it with us at this time. So just put it in the chat and we will screen it here. Do you have a particular candle, oil, lotion, fragrance, whatever that makes you relax? And while you start your watch parties and also subscribe to us on YouTube, we need more subscriptions. We will be taking your answers. So here we have Arlene Richards is saying that Japanese cherry blossom.
What's that, Norca?
That sounds like Victoria's Secret stuff. Am I right, Arlene? Good stuff, good stuff, good stuff. Anyone else? Before I start with the co-hostess, is anything else that really relaxes you, brings you joy, a particular and it could be food. It doesn't have to be anything like that. It could be
Mercy.
a particular scent of some dish that okay, this is Bath and Body Works. Thank you, Arlene. I stand corrected.
Yes.
Bath and Body Works. Thank you, Arlene. And yes, it's Japanese cherry blossom is just delicious smelling. So let's go with Dr. P. Do you have anything special that you use?
Anything vanilla or lavender.
Mm-hmm.
So body wash, body spray, spray for the room, anything vanilla or lavender relaxes me.
Nice. And I see Maricela here says that Midnight Lover Oil. Whoa.
Okay.
Relaxes me and makes me happy. Nature, listening to birds. Midnight Lover. I need to look for that. Margaret says lavender candle, rosemary oil for night relaxation.
Yes, lavender. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Glenda says lavender and eucalyptus with lemon oils. Love those combinations. Shonda, I know you have, listen, Shonda knows probably recipes because I've been with Shonda and she has a concoction and when she's done, you're like, what? Delicious. Smells heavenly. I don't know if you're going to share some of that now, Shonda. What works for you?
Yes. So right now I'm using a combination. As Nora says, I like combinations.
She loves the combo.
Wait.
Yeah, write it down. Try it. It's frankincense, patchouli, lemongrass, orange, and that
no, I think you need to
right
write
there.
it in the chat. That was
That is frankincense, patchouli, and then what else?
Lemongrass, orange.
Frankincense, patchouli.
That sounds bright, Shonda.
It's I can't describe what I feel when I smell it. It does a combination of things. It can be relaxing, it can be opening, it can be focusing, it can be healing. It's a combination. Try it.
Yeah, it sounds like very bright. That's the word. You're right. That's the word. That's the word.
And the color is bright. It does represent light. Those colors do represent light.
Yeah, Shonda, you got to put it. Okay, let me. Somebody's asking for it. So what is it again, Shonda? Let me type it here. Frankincense,
patchouli,
lemongrass. What is it? Patchouli.
Patchouli. PATCHOULI.
Never heard of that before, Shonda.
Yeah, patchouli, lemongrass.
I need to come by you.
And orange.
Orange. I'm gonna put here Shonda's remedy, Shonda's recipe for brightness.
It's sitting by me now. So
yeah, I brought my little one today, my diffuser, and you don't have do you have how many drops? No, 2 drops each? No?
Yes, exactly.
2 drops
of each.
Okay, everyone, I'm dropping it here. So you guys can have it. I'm dropping it in, yes. I dropped it on Facebook and on YouTube. Okay. So for me, it's lemongrass and lavender. No, it's lemongrass and peppermint, or peppermint and lavender. I like everything lavender. I'm with you, Tricia. Like at night, if I put lavender on my pillows, I'm good to go. Good to go. But when I mix it with peppermint carries it, right? So I use lemongrass and peppermint on my car. Ooh. Really gives it a very bright, really nice, welcoming scent. I think that we underestimate the power of aromatherapy, right? Mm-hmm. And we should really use it more, but we don't. So I have my little diffuser here today. Hopefully it will help to relax. Ladies, anyone else, or just not everyone? Well, if you have not tried anything in aromatherapy, you've gotten some recipes today and you've heard from the other ladies, we invite you to try it. Just relax yourself. Don't put on lotion just for putting lotion on. Take the time to smell it, savor it. It can really bring joy and relax. All right. So today we want to send congratulations to the 4 Real Women International Dutch Caribbean group. They have been doing fantastic work. So first we have pictures here of them with their work in, they had a sewing course. That's one of the ladies who completed the sewing course. They actually brought in a designer who taught the sewing course. The designer is that lovely lady there in that full suit, pantsuit, who taught the sewing course, and they had the one of the graduates is there pictured as one of their initiatives, which is fantastic. And then and don't underestimate the power of sewing either. Like I remember my mother sewing clothes for us to go to school for church too, and I missed the opportunity to learn from her, right? But it's something that we can use, especially during these times.
So, Norca, let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
It feels like there's a generational thing, because I remember my grandmother sitting at the singer, and she would do the thing with her feet, right? And I remember my mom doing it. She made her own maternity clothes when she was pregnant with Jason.
Wow.
And then when I went to school, I do not have a stitching, sewing, bone gene in my body. That's not where I go.
Shonda, is that
I plead the fifth. I plead the fifth. I agree.
I don't have it, and I'm wondering is it because it's so much easier now to go and just buy what you want that we didn't
probably
have to learn why we haven't learned?
I think it's a combination of that, and also because I don't think we think we are creative, but our creativeness is different. I remember the joy. Watch my mother she would be so excited to buy the cloth, get the pattern, put it together, and for us to wear it, it was like it was a great accomplishment for her. I think that we probably find joy in other things, but if you think about it, there was a lot of money that was saved.
Yeah,
there was a lot of, and probably not probably those garments were better made than the ones that we have now, right?
They were made just for you.
Exactly.
They were unique.
So, and another thing, and I'll stop. We have this idea that if the clothes don't fit, the problem is our body. When the problem is the clothes. Back then, when the clothes were made for us, all of those image issues of clothes, you know what it feels like to walk into a store and you're in between sizes, or you think you're one size and you turn out being another, usually bigger size, and how that feels. Back then, when the clothes were made for you, they were made for you. They measured you, they were made for you. So I think it even has implications when we talk about body image. But
you are so absolutely right. I think those were the best fitting clothes I ever had. You're right. You're right. They will be exactly for me. You're absolutely right. Go ahead, Shonda.
And you were complimented. And then you had the chance to say, oh, my mother made this because it was exactly for us. And I would take the scraps, and with a needle and thread, I would sew doll clothes out of
that.
The
I would do too. Yeah, yeah.
But not the singer. Just didn't get there.
Right. I know. And Fiona shares with us that she likes eucalyptus and spearmint candles. So we want to encourage all of you viewing to use aromatherapy as part of your. We've been on this journey to keep checking wellness into our lives. So we would like to celebrate or kind of ask you to celebrate yourself by using aromatherapy. So let me go back to the Dutch Caribbean. I hope Madeline is watching us on Facebook or on YouTube. And if Madeline, if you're there, contabai, just tell us that you're here. But she's doing fantastic work. We started the conversation about sewing because Madeline actually organized a sewing class with a fashion designer. And this is one of the graduates of the class as part of her for Real Women International initiative in Curacao in the Dutch Caribbean. And then she had a fantastic thing happening here. She started planning a girls' day. This was supposed to be a day for all the little girls in the community to come, but it just so happened that it ended up being a family day.
Oh,
because moms came, dads came, little brothers came, the entire family came. So here we see they're preparing lunch for them. They had it in a Centro de Barrio Ceru Papaya. That's the name of the community. And they had a ball. See the dads playing there. There was some cooking game. The dads are playing. The kids are with the rope. The moms are playing. And it ended up being this fantastic event for the entire family. And at the end, a lot of them told Madeline that they had never played with their kids. Like this was something, you know, you didn't have a phone and a device. You had to play with them. Like this was something new for them. They had such a great time. And they're like, when are you coming again? There are more people in this community that need to come out. So kudos to Madeline. Such an important initiative, right? Bringing back families together, celebrating the girls. But at the same time, think about how important that was for those little girls to see their dads and their moms and their brothers all playing together. It will be something that will remain in their memory for a long time. And besides Madeline Gitterson, who is the leader of For Real Women International in Curacao, in the Dutch Caribbean, we want to also say a special thank you to the volunteers who came out and helped her. Shani Vitorina, Cassandra Pasial, Junie Boxhoven, and Luedi Boxhoven for helping out and for just making this event a wonderful celebration of girls and just a coming together of all families. She has a whole lot of other pictures that we're not unable to share here, but you could really see the joy in the faces of the families as they came together and he spent the day just playing without phones, no devices, just the family playing together. Fantastic. So congratulations again to Madeline Gitterson. Good job for Women International Dutch Caribbean. So we bring to you news from the world of women. Interesting. Well, we're breaking the rule a little bit because we want to celebrate Miss Sara Blakely from Spanx. I don't know a woman who was not wearing a Spanx. But we want to celebrate.
I don't want to know a woman who has not.
We want to celebrate Sara, and a lot of young women, young entrepreneurs credit Sara for being the inspiration. A lot of women of color credit her for being the inspiration. She had a regular day job and she saved $5,000 because she had this idea that we could make better intimate wear for women, because she was putting together 2 and 3 pantyhoses to hold her body up and decided this could be a product. She took her $5,000, bet it, and left her job and went to get someone to create the product and became a millionaire. And what is interesting about her Spanx thing is that Sara Blakely, 3 days ago, she did something, and I'm going to share what she said. 3 days ago, her company was bought by Blackstone, and they bought it for $1.2 billion with a B, $billion. And what did she do? To celebrate and in gratitude to each of the employees that work with her, she gave each of her employees 2 first-class tickets to anywhere in the world. And each one of them got $10,000 to spend that money on wherever they wanted to go. And then she said during the celebration when she was toasting, she said that she wanted to toast for all the women who came before her and all the women in the world who have not had the opportunity that I had. She said, I said this company will one day be worth 20 million, and everyone laughed at me. And today we're worth more than $1 billion. And she began to tear up. And she said, while 50% of women are entrepreneurs in this country, they only receive 2.3% of venture capital. In a moment like this, Sara Blakely said, I think of my mom and my grandmothers and their lack of options and all the women that came before them. This would have only been a remote dream during their time. So kudos to Sara Blakely. Good going to honor and celebrate the people who stood with her. I think that's magnificent. And a woman like that will never lack for money because she understands the power of giving back.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yes.
So we go to, I don't know if you guys have any comments.
No, good. And you said it all.
Kudos. Yes.
We go to Ashley Jones.
All right, Shonda.
Yes,
Yes.
Illinois
Here
from
she
Birmingham. Shonda,
goes.
tell us about her.
Miss Ashley Jones, we love you. Ashley is the first Black and the youngest ever in the state of Alabama to have the title of the Poet Laureate. And it's so interesting because this is a state in 2021 that still feels they have white entitlement. And here she had to go through this whole process in order to become this poet laureate. And clearly, I'm sure that committee did not exactly represent who she was, but it's a sign of the changes that always persist in a world where hate just always tries to show its head. But this sister went out and she's already written books. She has another one that I think recently came out, but she has a series called Reparations Now, and it is a piercing and true critique of those in power here in America. And also, it also says that, look, there's some blatant inequalities that have continued to exist in this world, and I'm not going to stop speaking about them as long as they affect me. A lot of her writing, by the way, is from personal experience. So to receive that title of poet laureate based on that alone means what she has, it's powerful. So I implore all of you to go out, either buy her book, check her out on YouTube, etc., and read some of the stuff that she has put in that is specific in reference to Black women, especially life in the South and as an African American woman. But her aspirations, though, are just that she wants those who she's teaching to continue to write and to learn the truth about African American stories here and abroad. So thank you, Ashley, for all your hard work. We adore you. And we thank you for an amazing feat of becoming the first Black and the youngest to get that title in a state that's not known for kindness to people who look like you and I.
You know, it's interesting when you look at Ashley, when you look at Amanda Gorman, you see how these young women are finding their voice through poetry.
Yeah.
And probably it was there for a long time, but it was never paid attention to. And I think it's so powerful because they're speaking truth to power in such incisive, sharp ways, right? You have to pay attention to what they're saying.
And it's an art form at that. So it's a part
Absolutely.
of the art world also. And like you said, such as Amanda Gorman, I think of the poet laureate who had the title from the Library of Congress, also Tracy Smith. So to think of it from that particular category, poetry, sometimes I think poetry is the forgotten art that exists. And here she is, the poet laureate of Alabama.
Yeah, beautiful. So Tricia, tell us about Governor Kay Ivey.
So, as a follow-up to Chonda's news, I bring to you how not to be. I have 3 things I'd like to read for you. The first one is her Twitter, her tweet, where she said, "We have permanently banned critical race theory in Alabama. We're focused on teaching our children how to read and write, not hate. Number 1, critical race theory is not taught in elementary school. So she didn't ban anything because it did not exist." So that is a fake comment that is geared towards getting people all riled up about something that she really did not accomplish.
Fake news.
Number 1. Number 2, I'm going to read a definition of critical race theory that was coined by the American Bar Association. This is a legal term. CRT is not a noun, but a verb. It cannot be confined to a static and narrow definition, but is considered to be an evolving and malleable practice. It critiques how the social construction of race and institutionalized racism perpetuate a racial caste system that relegates people of color to the bottom tiers. We are used to hearing the caste system term used for India. We need to understand what it actually means and how it applies to where we live here. CRT also recognizes that race intersects with other identities, including sexuality, gender identity, and others. CRT recognizes that racism is not a bygone relic of the past. Instead, it acknowledges that the legacy of slavery, segregation, and the imposition of second-class citizenship on Black Americans and other people of color continue to permeate the social fabric of this nation. And this is how she proved why what she says she bans, she needs to learn about. Because she took the COVID relief money and is using it to build prisons.
My Lord.
Why is that important in Alabama? I'm going to read it because I don't want to lie on her. In 2015, in Alabama, 28% of the state population was Black, 43% of the jail population was Black.
Oh, wow.
In the prison system in 2017, so this isn't getting better, right? The prison system, not the jail system, but the prison system. 28% again of the state population is Black. 54% of the prison population in Alabama is Black. And 70% of the people who are in jail are there pre-trial. They haven't even gotten their chance to even say whether they're innocent. They are pre-trial in 70%. So this that she says she's banning, she needs to read about, because she is using money that was supposed to help the people in Alabama who are suffering disproportionately from COVID, who are underrepresented, the minorities. And instead of using that money to help them, she's using that money to build more prisons to jail them. Really? And so in news, we want to celebrate women every chance we get, but this one, I'm done, Norca.
Wow.
I just can't.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm less speechless, sin palabras. So egregious. I mean, and I think the worst part is that not only the impunity part, but the part of honestly putting your face and your name and your signature to this, knowing you must think that they're not human beings for you to be able to take these positions, right? Because you don't even know what's going on in your state, or you just don't care.
Whoa, I forgot one thing.
Go ahead.
Alabama's educational system right now, 46th in the nation.
Yeah.
So you're not even teaching them to read and write. That
Exactly.
what she said that she's teaching. She's not even making sure they learn how to read and write.
That is such a strong point. So your state is number 46 in the nation, meaning yes, they don't know how to read and write, right? Yes. And you're here making the statement about we're going to teach children to read and write and not to hate. You need to give them some critical race theory. You need to empower those kids so they understand the history of this nation.
And let's go back.
And let's go back. Yeah.
Let's go back to the fact that only 28% of the population is Black. So that 46% in the nation is not because I don't want to hear then, it's because we have a lot of minorities in that state. That's why it's so low.
Right.
So we need that's critical.
That's a good point. That's critical.
You are putting all these things together to come up with a picture that is not complimentary of Governor Ivey.
Right. So leadership lady live said, look at her apparent age.
She's 71.
Yeah, but not an excuse. We've had Denise Miller here doing videos every day, and she's 70 plus. So
she's the one that said, isn't Denise the one that said?
Yeah, I think yes.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is that age is not an excuse for the mindset.
Absolutely.
She's just not open. She's set in her ways. Brenda says Ivey is off kilter, but why and how can she use Fed funds to build prisons with COVID money? That's the larger question, Brenda. Why is that being allowed? Why isn't someone she needs to be taken to task for this, right?
And she's joined the suing of the federal government in regards to vaccine mandates. So
right. So this is what Denise is saying. Look at her age, understand the environment she grew up in, know that she will behave like a bigot. Shonda, go ahead. You were trying to say something.
I definitely agree just with that point. And I was just going to say, reflect on her story, right? Not our story, not the true story of America. This woman is coming out of an era, and to think about it, when she would not have had privileges or rights. But yet you tend to believe it is okay to build, structures and institutions that will continue to oppress, and you will once oppress. But she must also continue to run on a path in which she has been able to thrive in the state that Ashley Jones is from, by the way. I'm sure she's not pleased with Ashley Jones, by the way, but she has to continue that white entitlement stream of disinformation and myth that pervades the American South. And that's what she's doing. And if you don't have money that represents what she's talking about, then you're just out. So be it poor, be it black, be it woman, whatever, you're out.
And I think Brenda encapsulates that well by saying she's chronologically 71, but her real age is antebellum South. Absolutely. She's still stuck there. She is right there. Wow. So before we go to the last piece of news that will take us into our conversation with Kaysian, I'm going to make a break here because I want us all to do the following. Pick up your phone or your device, and I want you to share this either on your Facebook page, on your WhatsApp, on your YouTube, wherever it is. I want you to share this and tell them, hey, join me, I'm watching live. Just say that, join me, I'm watching live. So we're going to ask you to do that. I'm going to go up and down the line with some of my WhatsApp folk. And I'm going to ask them to do that, to join us because we're live. So help us to get the word out there. We think the conversations here are worth your time, and we think that the conversations will help many, many women. And today we have a very important conversation. All of the conversations have been important, but we want you to get the word out there. Thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. So we want to go to our next and final news item for today. This is I want to introduce you to President Sandra Mason of Barbados. Actually, let me read her full name. Her full name is Sandra Prunella Mason. She's a lawyer. Yeah, she's a lawyer. And Barbados, an island nation of about 300,000 residents, where Queen Elizabeth was the head of state since 1915, part of the colonization and the imperialist tradition. In September, you all remember, I love Prime Minister Mia Mottley. Mia Mottley announced that the time has come to fully leave our colonial past behind. Barbadians want a Barbadian head of state. And so said September. And today, Barbados has become the latest Caribbean island to shed the role of the Queen and to pursue the formation of their own republic. And they named Sandra Prunella Mason as their president. Barbados is following Guyana, who did it in the 70s, Trinidad and Tobago, and then Dominica, who also did it. Mason was a governor general for the island. It was a position that was appointed by the Queen Elizabeth since 2018, and she had been nominated, subject to parliamentary vote, to become the to take the position of president. Miss Motley said that this is one of the first steps in transition, including the beginning of a new constitution that they will begin working on in January. Congratulations to Barbados.
Yes, ma'am.
Good for you. We have to cut ties with those colonial and imperialists if we want to move forward. And hopefully other island nations, I know a lot of people are saying if they do that, they're cutting away their lifeblood, what they're going to do with their economy. But it's time for people to find the ways. And the Caribbean is rich. The Caribbean has wood. The Caribbean has a lot of creative minds. I am sure that they're going to come up with how they can sustain the island. I don't know. Are there any comments from Tricia and Shonda?
I went to Barbados in 2000, I believe. And I compared it with Limon. Barbados the beaches were open to everybody. There was a lot of local artistry. So they were selling things made out of shells, crab cakes. I mean, but it didn't look like street sales. Catered a lot to the idea of tourism. Clean, orderly, all of that. It reminded me of Limon when I was growing up. And made me wonder what life would be like if every place was able to take advantage of their own riches and product and not have to ship things out, right? So I'm very proud of what Barbados has done in selecting her. There's got to be a reason, and wish her well. You know, wish her well. It sure isn't going to be easy. We know that for sure. Anytime you're coming in to change, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for the naysayers to say, "See, we were right." So I really hope that she's supported by her people so that there can be success.
Yeah, it's just so awesome to see women, especially women of color, in positions of power, being a true representation of what the world looks like. Not to say that men can't represent, men can represent, men do just as well and awesome, but we know his, her, and our historically, women and especially women of color have not been represented in positions of power, decision making, influence of the culture of the countries in which they represent. So this is powerful.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I have Bajan, as they call him. I have Bajan roots. My name Blackman is a highly Bajan name. I have yet to visit my family in Barbados. My grandfather was a proud Bajan man. And one thing that I see, the pattern that I'm watching and I'm seeing in Barbados is that the women are moving and shaking the political scene, and they're moving the country ahead. The prime minister, we all talked about her speech at the United Nations General Assembly and how forthright she was and how clear she was about calling the world to come together. Clearly, these are women that have bigger visions of leadership. So the joining of the forces at this particular time in history is going to be very important for this island nation. I think great things are in store for them. And we'll be watching closely, but I am sure that God is with you. You'll be fine. You have nothing to fear. You have nothing to fear. So kudos to them once again. And that's fun that Maricela said she sent the link to 12 people. Maricela, thank you very much. Fiona said she's married to a Bajan. To quote Bob Marley, Brenda said, "Get up, stand up." That's right. That's right. And it's time. It's time. We need to cut the colonial past. It has not. People talk about the economy of it, but besides the economy, think about the diminishing of a people.
Yes.
Because of the diminishing of the mind because of these colonial ties. So it's It's time to move
Can
on.
you believe it that we're still in 2021 and that's still going on?
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And I will tell you, I lived in a country who had been colonialized by Britain. And I will tell you, Britain did not do much for them. So I don't know when people talk about Britain this and Britain that. I can tell you, poverty was at levels unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't think they
took their resources, and there's
Yeah.
very little that came back. So forget that. Yeah, forget that. Well, today we have with us an exciting guest, Kasian Gordon. We're so excited to have Kaysian with us. Kaysian has been, I've known Kaysian for a while. Kaysian actually reminded me of some work I did way back when. And she was a young lady then. And she was in that room. And when she told me about it, I'm like, what? You were there? There was a bunch of teenagers we were talking to.
Kaysian, did you notice that you just said you were a young lady then?
Listen, even I know that I was I was probably like in my 20s.
But you can't let her just say that.
Was. Yeah, she just really called me old.
She did.
Good thing I look 25 though. Good thing.
Yes.
Yes.
That is so true. That is so true. So we're so excited to have Kaysian with us today. But Kaysian, we want to start because the topic today is hot, right? Girl, get your money straight. But we want to start by asking you to share your, because I didn't want to read the titles. You got a lot of things behind your name. I want you to share it with us. Share with us your financial expertise journey. Where does it all come from?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. I have to say, I'll start with my mom. She always sent me to the bank in Jamaica. Even as a little kid, she would like give me the money and tell me how to go bank it, which is crazy now when you think about it. But I would say that, but part of separate from being a saver, when I was in my 20s and just finishing up college, this is going way back when, but just finishing up college. And now I knew that I had a full-time job that was going to come, but I wouldn't start for a year in public accounting. And I knew what I was going to be making. And it seemed like a whole lot of money. And I racked up some debt. And it wasn't even, now when I think about it, it was not a whole lot of debt. But for then it was a lot of debt because, you know, when you think about it, you're making a lot of money or supposedly, but they didn't tell you about taxes. So you're not getting the gross. They didn't tell you about saving for your 401k. They didn't remind you that you would have all these other bills to pay. So on paper, it seemed like a whole lot of money. And when I started my career in public accounting, I had this friend, and I'll say Isidore Miller. He sat me down and said, okay, so this is what you're going to do. You're going to put money towards your debt. You're going to save $50 in an ING account every pay period, and you're going to put towards your 401k plan. And I will say he started the fundamentals of my financial journey. Fast forward to a few years later, I left and I went to UBS. I started as an intern at UBS, but then got hired full-time there. And that's really when it all kind of started coming together with learning about finances, but really learning like for wealthy people and what they did. And guess what? They do a lot of some of the things that we do too. They just have more money to do it with. So along the way, I'd already got my CPA license. I got my MBA in finance, accounting, and taxation from Fordham. And then after that, that program was geared towards taking the certified financial planning exam, which I took, failed it the first time and then passed it the second time. And then I've done some other stuff after that, but really spending almost 15 years straight at UBS, working with the types of clients that I did. And for the last 2+ years have been on the independent side of the financial world, teaching my clients about finances and investing for them.
Well, Kaysian, I want you to go back to that story about your mother. Your mother had a business?
No, she had a regular job, and I want to say that she broke the mold of what every other person in her genre did. Even now, when I look at her, however many years later, I see that she broke the mold of everything that was expected of her, growing up in the situation that she did, in the choices that she made. She bought a house, like, I don't know, at 30 or something. And just, it was her persistence. It was not because she had anything. It was the persistence and the fact that even through the hard circumstances that she had, she made different choices than everyone else around her. And I was the beneficiary of that.
You know, it's amazing. I met your mother till lately, and I didn't know that that was your mother. I mean, the lady was sprightly, and you know, and she said,
she looks younger than me.
I know. I said, that's your mother. You know, she was in her own world. This was not a lady waiting by the car for Kaysian to come. No, she was doing her thing. She had her friend. She had her thing going. But then I also looked at your daughter, and I want you to share that. How old is your daughter? And I saw you doing some things with your daughter, because that is the third generation of finance right there.
Yeah. So my daughter is 9, and I think part of just the things that I've learned naturally comes out with teaching her. So I teach her about faith. I teach her about finances. One of our pastors said it, Pastor Thompson, he said, and it comes from the Bible, teach your children, talk to them, basically. So I'm always talking to her. And I'm telling you, the pandemic has been such an incredible blessing if you were to really pay attention to it. So I remember, I think it was a couple months ago, and I saw the headline, like, pop up the notification on Yahoo Finance, and I think the market was down. And I didn't say any of that. I'm like, ooh, it's time to buy for my clients. And my daughter, Amelia, she's like, oh, the market must be down. I'm like, wait, what? And I'm like, that is so incredible. And just her being able to hear the conversations that I have with my clients. And I'm like, whose kid are you? And where do you come up with these things?
Yours.
Thank you.
Yours. Can I ask something more about your story that caught my attention? You very much in passing said you failed it the first time and you took it the second time.
Right.
Girl.
And that itself is like a title for a sermon, workshop, conference, everything, because there are so many of us, myself included, who have failed the first time and did not go to the second time.
Yeah.
Because it felt like if I did not pass it, it must not be for me.
Right.
So the fact that you're saying right now, I took it, I failed it, I took it again. I just want us to rest in that just a second.
Hold on, I got more stories for you. That's just one of them. Okay?
It's important because some people believe that
and I purposely
success
say
means
that.
you never fail.
Yes.
I purposely say that. So I think part of not coming from a heritage of being an all-A student from the get-go allowed me to be able to fail things and go back and try again. Well, I'll tell you, I said I have my CPA license. Nobody ever asked you what your score is for your CPA license, right? I took 3 parts the first time, way back when it was pen and paper. I took the first 3 parts. I passed 2 and failed 1. I got my conditional credits. The next time I took 2 parts, I passed 1 and failed 1. I had to go back a 3rd time to pass the last part. That was 1. Okay. The next part was my industry license. The series 7 I passed the first time. Series 66 I missed by like a point or 2. I had to go back and take it again. The CFP exam, I'm like now married and like not thinking, I'm like, this is the last thing I want to be doing. And actually, I think what my husband's niece said to me, she's like, I really admire you. I respect you. And I'm looking up to you. You need to do this again. And like, I rolled everything because I'm like, this is the last thing I wanted to do. And I did it. And thankfully I passed. But yeah, there's so many times that we don't see the failures behind the successes that you see. So you see the letters now, but you don't know the stories of what I endured to get to the place that I am at. So yes, thank you for pointing that out.
And you know that, those of us who are in education know that the test does not determine whether the person can do the job. It determines how well you can, retain.
Spit it out on the test.
Spit it out on the test.
What's going on in your life, right? Because there's so many times that you have studied, but like day of the exam or day before something happens and you're like, you're not just focused and like just so many different things.
Right. Right. And for women, they found out things like if you're having your period, your premenstrual, all those things impact us when we do tests. But at the same time, back to the point of the test really doesn't determine if this person will be successful at applying the knowledge. Right. So definitely you're clearly successful at what you do, and we applaud that. But thanks for sharing that, because I think oftentimes as women we beat ourselves up, right, Tracy and Shonda, because we feel I failed, so something is wrong with me, I'm not going back.
Or you give up.
You give up
and you take an alternate route.
Right.
So,
and especially in a field such as that, because this is an area and space for women, but for all people, we know those are areas that we almost dare to think about entering into those fields. And so when you fail in an area like that, you're probably thinking, this is for men only, but you persisted.
Ooh, you're jumping the gun, because that's the next section. But I have that one.
Yeah, Kaysian. And that was going to be how many people that look like you are in your field?
So I actually did. I was talking to a coach, a white man who's become a very, very good friend of mine. And he's like, Kaysi, I would love to have people work with you. And he listed off my qualities. And then he's like, and you're a woman of color. And I'm just like, okay. And I literally got off the phone with him and Googled Black CFPs. And at the time I had to do the math, and it came down to about 1.5% of the CFP population. Now, cut that by half, because I want to be generous, and say 50% of the 1.5 is Black women. So half, 0.75%, and then combine that with all the other designations that I have, and I'm like, I'm a unicorn.
Yes, you are.
I did not know that until a year and a half ago.
Wow. We applaud you for that, but we want other women who are listening and looking at Kaysian right now to be encouraged to keep going. She broke down the wall for you. Now you need to go in there and pass in there. All right, so we want to talk about the she session, right? We know that the pandemic impacted women in so many ways. We talk all the time about domestic violence, the women who had to stay home, and the increased threats to their physical health, emotional health. But then there was this large group of women in the United States and around the world who had to leave work because they didn't have anyone to take care of the kids. So many reasons. They had to take care of their parents. So many things that happened, and there was a double recession on women, right? So once everyone was feeling one thing, women were feeling it double time. What can you tell us about the she session, Kaysian, and what did you note?
So I think that's such an incredibly important point, right? Because in the past, and based on the readings that I've done, in the past, typical recessions usually hurt men more. This one hit women particularly hard because we became the ones who needed to stay home for the most part and take care of the kids. And how can you take care of the kids and teach the kids and still do the work that you're expected to do? Also, you have the types of jobs typically that you needed to be in person to do them. So where a lot of I want to say male-centric jobs, you were able to log in from your computer and keep working. Many of these jobs were things that you just needed to go in person to do, and unfortunately, that's women, and you couldn't do that. So you couldn't go into work because that was not an option. And then for those who had the option to stay home, many of them had children to take care of, or family members to take care of, or just so many things. And so and forget it if you didn't have money invested, or if you had money invested and you jumped out of the stock market, you did not get to recover like many who did. So last year, only a certain part of the population really suffered. Like those who were in white collar jobs, and this is just a general statement, those who were in white collar jobs who stayed home, they couldn't spend like they were, right? And they had investments, it like rebounded in multiples. So you're not spending, right? Because you don't have the places to spend. You're not traveling. You're not going out for drinks. You're not doing, so you're saving way more. So people were able to pay down debt if they had it, save way more. I think the savings rate on a overall basis was like 21% or something incredible last year. So when I tell you that only a part of the population was affected, only a part of the population, because many came out of last year doing much better financially than they went in.
But these are people who are already doing well financially, because I have sat in meetings with board members that do not look like you or me. And they're talking about the houses they remodeled, the franchises they bought, how they went here and there for vacation. And you're sitting there thinking, and you're making decisions about the poor and needy. You have zero empathy for what's going on because you've done better.
You got empathy, right? But you're not in the same shoes and your circumstances, and you can't relate.
You can't
relate because you were able to remodel, even though the prices of lumber and everything else went up. Meanwhile, some people are like struggling to figure out how they're going to put food on the table. Right.
And you know, that I think because of this disconnect that exists, that has impacted so many decisions right after the pandemic, right?
Yes.
So this drive, like I work in higher ed, this drive, let's get everybody back in. But yet you had students who were in communities where people were dying left and right. They're now trying to recover financially. But the others, because they did well, are like, okay, everybody come back to normal. For some folk, it's not back to normal.
Never going to be normal again.
No, Norcor, I actually just received a letter from our school sharing that so many of our kids are in a worse off position and like are struggling with food shortage. Right. Literally the last few days I opened my mail and that was it. And it's right. It's dependent on the area that you're in, the community that you're in, that you suffered far more than another population.
Right. And
if I may go back.
Go ahead,
Sean. If I may go back a little bit, when you talked about usually those who are a little more affluent were able to gain any more, it was even much more damaging for people in certain communities who just really don't have financial skill and literacy.
Yeah.
And to have been put in a position as this pandemic, that was worldwide, had no clue how to shift. Because financial literacy, language, it's just not in the vocabulary, unfortunately. And we got hit the hardest because a lot of us sometimes didn't know how to do. And a lot of us had to get out there and keep finding ways. So I think that's where people were spending more because they needed to get to work, right? And lower income people had to keep spending on transportation and things like that.
And they were the ones getting sick.
Right. And paying for medications or different things, but not having a clue on how to make other shifts in their lives, if it were possible. And perhaps that's a tip or two you can share. But for ways for people who are not in certain income brackets to also be able to get their money together. But they just didn't have a clue on what to do. It just seemed to them that it was more spending, and I don't know. It just seemed like it was so much more damaging because the literature about finances is not normal in those areas.
And I even wonder I don't even know if it's that they couldn't manage, because I think about the fact that when I went back on campus, the guys who clean the offices, right, work for building and grounds, they were telling me stories about being forced to go back to work when the big bosses were calling them by phone and Zooming with them, but they were the ones who had to go back, right? So I asked, how did you survive? They're like, we had to put food on the table, and for $15 an hour, we had to make it work. So we would come to work and make sure we went straight home, stop nowhere. So I think that for some communities, it wasn't even about managing. It was just like they had no option. They just had to do what they had to do to survive. But as you said, Sean, that there was medication, there was transportation, there was so much that was involved for them. And I don't think that those conversations are necessarily had. When, for example, a student was saying to me, during a pandemic, I have an instructor asking me to purchase a $500 textbook during the pandemic when nobody in my house is working. I have financial aid, but it's basically trying to put some food on the table. So there's a disconnect between, it seemed to me like there were 2, 3, 4 Americas.
No,
Right.
but see, the sad thing is, I live in Florida, and just by saying that, there's, there's a, people are getting evicted.
Yes, that too.
People are getting evicted, and the people that are getting evicted, the eviction notices legally so if you're leasing for a year, you get 3 months. If you're leasing for a month, you get a week. If you're leasing week by week, you get a day. So you have a family that you're supposed to just find where to live from today to tomorrow, because you got a notice that you can no longer live here, and you're paying week to week because that is how you get paid. You can't pay for a month. You can only pay for a week. And since it's over, then you are forced to go out, but there's no longer places that rent for what you paid, because now all the rent prices are going up. So you're getting the effects of this. That is why we thought it was so important to have this conversation today, because the effects of this pandemic, we will be seeing the financial for such a long time still, because we haven't begun to feel the real burden of it in certain populations.
So Kaysian, we talked about the women and the she session, right? Bringing all of this together, and women having all the extra burdens of having to take care and all of that. But now we hear about people leaving jobs. So is it that mostly men are leaving their jobs? This great American
the great resignation.
Yeah.
The great resignation. So and I don't know what the statistics or the population of men versus women are leaving their jobs, right? It's just that I think many people have recognized. So for some, they were able to save up a whole lot of money last year, right? And into this year. And for others, they realize that life is short and they can no longer do the things that they did before because it didn't bring them joy. It was draining. It was all of these things. And if you can now find a job that's going to either pay you better or do whatever, or you can take this time off because you've saved so much money, now you've got options, right? And this is what happens when you don't have your finances right. You don't have any options. So you have to go to work. You have to do all these things. But if your finances are in a certain order, and I want to read something to you, I was reading it this week, that you just have to do what you have to do to get food on the table, right? So, and this is what, like, one of the things that I want to change so badly, even in just conversations like this. When you have your finances in a certain order, it gives you options and you can sleep at night, right? And you don't have to make a ton of money. You have to make enough, yes, but it's now how you're spending your money and the choices that you make. And that is like, I know Dave Ramsey teaches this. So for anyone who's a Dave Ramsey fan, it's not necessarily about how much you make, but it's really about how you're spending what you're making. Right. And don't get me wrong. I know that there are some who are not making enough, that are barely having ends meet. But this is what I wanted to share with you, the statistics. And this book was based on, information is based on 2013. It says the median, so in between the lower end and the higher end, the median retirement account balance is $3,000 for working age households and $12,000 for near retirement households. Like, that is a crazy statistic when I think about it. Like, $3,000, how far is $3,000 going to get you? And that's the median, right? And then 12,000.
Would you repeat that and break it down a little bit, please?
Sure. So the median retirement account balance is $3,000 for all working age households. So everybody combined, when you look at, like, basically everybody that has a retirement plan or a retirement account, it's $3,000
in the account.
And the median, right? So that's a median. So there's some that got gazillions and there are some that has none, right? So the median is another way of looking at an average. And it says, and $12,000 for near retirement households. So you're near retirement and you've got $12,000. It was so astounding that I actually sent a picture. That's how I was able to find it so quickly. I took a picture and sent it to my friend because I'm like, This is crazy.
Yes.
Right? $12,000 is not going to get you very far in retirement. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back here again. Forgive the insistence.
No problem.
So you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm understanding you to say is for all the people who have any money in their retirement account,
Mm-hmm.
what they have for their full retirement forever, it's not that they're getting $3,000 a month.
No.
Is that they have $3,000 period.
So median.
Yes.
Median, yes. So median is like another term for average.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. But that's it.
I think it's a better number than an average. It's a better way of looking at it. $3,000.
When those 3,000 are done, you have nothing left.
Maybe Social Security, but Social Security is also based on your lifetime earnings.
That's why I wanted to stay here a little bit,
right?
Because since we're used to thinking about money by month,
right?
Then that's why I wanted to ask again, because this isn't a by month. This is what you've got when it's done. If you're the one in the 3,000, and if you're on the wrong side of the median, that could be 300. When that is done,
or nothing, right?
That's done.
For $3,000 to be the median, it means, and again, this is from 2013, so I'm praying that it's changed by now. But also there's another statistic that says, and veering off a little bit, that 40% of the population, and I heard this sometime last year, if there was a $400 emergency, that 40% of the population would not be able to afford it.
I've heard that.
Time out.
You like that timeout?
I do. That is a serious pause because
it's probably higher now.
That's not even rent for many people.
That's not,
and that's the problem, right? So you have no money saved,
right?
And if your car breaks down for $400, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
Right. And 40% of the population fall into that. So can you imagine how last year impacted those people?
It's probably higher now.
It's probably higher,
yeah.
Right? Because if you were in that population, I probably heard it earlier in the pandemic, like you didn't go to work, you needed to have food, and that's why the food lines were so long last year.
Right.
You know, all of a sudden you don't have the income that you were depending on, and you did not have a week or a month, or even if you did. So hypothetically, say you did what you were supposed to do, right? And you were told that if you're a married couple, you should have 3 months of savings set aside. If you're single, you should have 6 months. The pandemic comes and you're out of work for a year plus. You've got issues, right? So even the number that is usually the safety net number that would work in normal circumstances, last year blew it out of the water.
Right. And Kaysian, I see a comment here from Maricela talking about she cannot imagine how people that are on minimum wage salary are managing with the way the price of food has tripled, and food has gone up. And
no, I wouldn't say tripled. I'd say increased.
Yeah, but it has gone up.
Inflation, right?
Right. And when we think about minimum wage, those of us in New York, there are certain policies, but there are other places in this country where minimum wage is very low. And if you think if you're a waiter or a waitress, I was listening carefully to the radio one time, and it said something about the waitress is so attached to that service profession is so attached to the way it was in slavery that their minimum wage, they live off tips. And not having tips during the pandemic, not being able to work completely, even they could not even get benefits from the government because supposedly they were not making enough money.
Yeah.
So a lot of them had to walk away from the profession and think about how many people do waitressing. I know a lot of my students that do, their family members that do. Think about that particular industry and how they were hard hit by what went on in during the pandemic. But let's go to myths about money that we believe as women, so we can hit into
some of, you're already touching on some of these areas, but what are some things that as women, which she has a little notebook, what are some things that as women we believe about money that are mixed, that we need to, disabuse ourselves of these ideas?
So someone said it earlier. I think it might have been Shauna said it. So I want to actually say that it's a myth, right? Women are not good with money. It's a lie, y'all. It's a lie. Women are better with money than men are, right? Women are better investors because we look for different things. It's just that we have not been taught well. I'll go to the next one. Money should not be talked about in polite company. If you don't talk about finances, how are you going to learn? And this is why we have the situation that we do now. Money is not being talked about enough, and we need to change that. Okay? It is not impolite to talk about money. It's actually quite fun to talk about money, right? I love it, maybe because it's the passion that I have, but I know that so many of the choices I have now, it's because money was talked about when I was early growing up. Men should handle the finances because they're better at it. Okay. And this is what you find in couples. I won't say many or few or whatever, but that the women will deal with the day-to-day finances, but they don't look at the long-term finances, and they leave it up to their spouses or partners to do that. It's okay if you want to have your spouse take care of the finances, but you've got to know what's going on. If your husband, unfortunately, drops dead, as last year could have been the case, right? You don't want to have to worry about where things are, how things were managed, or whatever else. Women like security, and we like that safety. If you don't know how the finances are being done, you don't have that sense of security because you think your husband's taking care of it. That's not enough. That's not a good enough answer. I'm not going to tell you to knock over your husband and go take over the finances, but you need to be aware of what is happening, right? Be empowered, because when you are empowered, again, you have other choices. You can talk with your spouse about how the house is being run, how things are being done, how are you spending your money, right? And this is not a myth. This is more about, like, are you spending your money in line with your values, right? Norca might have something else that she appreciates with how she spends her money. Me, we're going to talk about some vacations. That's the thing that I value. I'm not going to be, I need to go out to a restaurant. That's not necessarily my thing. So I shouldn't be spending my money going out on restaurants when what I prefer is international travel, because money is a finite resource. And we can't spend it on everything. And we can't keep up with the Joneses, y'all. We can't keep up with the Joneses and look at social media and how everyone else is spending. We have to spend it, almost like be true to yourself with how you're spending. So those were really the three main myths that I had.
Yeah.
Can I ask you something, please?
Sure.
Sorry. So let's talk and if I'm going ahead of myself, please tell me. But we are talking right now about married women whose husband is the breadwinner.
The head of the household or the breadwinner? Which
I
one?
said breadwinner.
Okay.
I specifically said breadwinner.
Okay.
But there are, and it may be that in these cases, these women raise their daughters in homes where they saw their father as the breadwinner and never saw their mom asking the questions. But now they are on their own. So I think it's really important that we have this conversation with this other generation that maybe thought they would never be in a position where they had to make these decisions.
Yeah. So remember I told you how my mom broke the mold on everything, right? Sometimes we have to break this mold, and we have to look around, and getting married is not a guarantee, right? Or staying married is not a guarantee. I was married. I didn't think it was going to last for 3+ years, but that's what it did. and I have a child. And so I have to teach her, right? Not that I should be independent of a man, because that's not what I want to teach her. I just want to teach her how to look at her money from early.
Right.
Right. So at no point does it come between a man or a woman or whatever. I'm just literally teaching her about money. So when you get money, you got to save some. When you get money, you got to give the church some or be charitable. When you get money, you get to spend some. Don't go so restrictive that all you ever do is teach how to save. And then the person doesn't learn how to enjoy their money as well, because I think that's doing a disservice as well.
Kaysian, are we jumping into the next thing?
Are we jumping into this? No, actually, I was just answering a question, but I do have some tips. I do have some tips. Yeah, but no, this is really just answering Trisha's question as to we can break the mold. And sometimes you can't teach what you don't know, right?
Exactly.
So sometimes it's educating, and there are lots of free, I had to get into this. There are lots of free sessions that are available, but do the gut check. If it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't sound right, don't go down that road, right? And do some research. If something feels off, do some research. There's a lot of resources. There are lots of books out there that can at least guide you, and they don't have to be written complicatedly. And I think that's one of the things that I heard before, that it just doesn't seem to be English. Money can be talked about in English, as I'm doing now, in a way that you can understand it. And if you're looking for somebody to work with and they can't talk to you in English about money, and you don't understand the language that they're talking about, that's not the person to work with.
Next. Like Ariana said.
Think about. I just like to look at how to go back to myths about women not being good with money. If you look at a lot of our communities, especially communities of color, a lot of them were built by the women who knew how to take the money and put it in the right places. Just think about here in America, a lot of the HBCUs came out of church basements, and these women who sat down and had fish dinners and said, we need to do this because this needs to happen. So there are ways, there's always a will, and it's having the conversations. And I think a lot of times in families, we do, and we expect that the generations to follow will just absorb it. I like what you said earlier, Kaysian. You got to have the conversations about those things, that while you're doing it, explain what you're doing. That allows for conversations from the next generation, because they're just as creative and can add something to enhance what it is you're already doing. So yeah, that myth is just so far out the window. If we would just see beyond that myth, we would know how a lot of our countries, our institutions, etc., were built.
So Brenda made an excellent point, and I want to call it out. So according to the Sunday New York Times, women are often better at investing. Over a 10-year period, female Fidelity customer earned an average of 0.4 percentage points more than their male counterparts. And I'll tell you that that's true. I've heard similar things along the way, and I almost said it, right? Women are better investors because we're not, I think men like to be all over the place. Like, so they'll invest in something, they'll sell, whatever else. Women are more inclined to invest and you end up making more over the long term, having that strategy, as opposed to being in, being out, because you miss opportunities when you're in and out and doing all kinds of things. And that's been, I've heard that quite a few times in my career.
Yeah, I wanna go to this section, and just because there are quite a few questions here that I want you to address specifically, and I know you have your tips, so I'm gonna ask you the questions that are here, and then we're going to go into your tips. We had a question from Brenda. Is the same way of thinking about saving the amount of money that is needed to retire still applicable? There is no way I can save $1 million, especially given the cost of living. What are your
I love that question. I love that question. So $1 million might be a number that has been thrown out, but it depends on how you're spending your money and in having it invested, right? So I don't know how you are, how old you are, so I don't have a whole lot of details about you. But I have a client who has, I don't know, she's actually just retired, $500,000, and I've modeled it where based on her monthly spending, and it's not a whole lot. There's so many factors that go into this, right? It's having your money invested, first of all. So it can't just be sitting in the bank, not earning any, that just earning interest. That's not going to get you to retirement. You also need to watch your spending. It's not how much you have, it's how much you're spending and how quickly you're spending it down. So that's hugely important as well. The amount of risk that you're taking, again, over the long term. And if you don't have any unexpected major expenses, you can have a certain dollar amount. And remember that for now, anyway, there is Social Security that will supplement or that can supplement your retirement. So there's so many different factors, and it may not, $1 million may not be your number, right? And this is why it's important to work with somebody or to at least have an understanding of what's the number that I need for retirement. People are living longer in retirement with health, like improvements in health and all these different things. People are living longer. It's not like the olden days where you retired at 65 and you were gone by 67, right? You could retire at 65 and easily live another 30 years.
Yeah.
So your money has to last you a long time. So there are a number of factors in determining the dollar amount that you need. And I hope that answers your question.
And there's another question here from Margaret. She says, thinking about people in the minimum wage solely affected by COVID and right now have to pay rent increase to cover landlords' bills. Right now I'm going through this. Any advice? Minimum wage and high rent. Any advice?
Yeah, that's huge. And I don't know if this program is still available, but it's the New York State rental assistance program. So that might be something that you could try to look into. I don't have, I know it's a hard situation where you're not making enough and you still have to pay the landlord because you live there. And I think it's fair to pay the landlord. So it's looking at what available programs there are. And it might be, I don't know if it's late, but this is why between the programs that they had where they were giving out money last year, the stimulus programs, but again, that's not enough to cover when you have like big rents taking care of families.
So let me ask you this then. What kind of person can someone go to find out what programs are available locally? Where would they go? Is there a website? Is there a certain type of title that someone needs to find someone, financial advisor? Where can someone go to find information that can help them locally when they're going through a situation like the one we just talked about?
So honestly, I don't have those resources. So it's Googling, it's seeing what New York City programs there are. It's Googling different searches to kind of tell you what you're looking for. But unfortunately, I don't have those resources.
No, that's fine, because not everybody on this is living in New York, but just if, it's good to know that.
Yeah.
Go to Google and
state or city that you're in for the type of service that you're looking for.
Thank you.
Right. I want to mention one that I know we share with some of our students is the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, ERAP. I'm going to invite, if you're living in New York, look for the ERAP. And I think they had an upcoming deadline, but you could apply. ERAP, Emergency Rental Assistance, actually trying to help folk not to end up on the street. Two more questions. One comment that I would like you to extend on, and another question. This comment is from Nikisha. She said, it is very important to start talking to our kids about money and how it works. Depending on the age of the kids, you explain it to them accordingly. Could you share with us the fact that your daughter was so in tune with the whole thing with the stuff? What have you done to teach her about finances? Because maybe that would be a good answer to a good follow-up comment to this?
So I just live my life in front of her, I guess. We talk about money. My kid has been signing and swiping and signing since before she could talk, really. So she see me at the credit when we're using the credit card, and she unfortunately thinks everything is paid by for a credit card, and I have to remind her or explain to her that you got to have money in the bank to pay back the credit card bills. But it's really just having conversations when she asks for money, explaining that money, not that it doesn't grow on trees, but like, how are you spending this money? And if I give her a loan, you better believe that she has to pay it back. So she understands the concept that the money is not free, and just I set budgets for her. So if she wants to go to the store, and she always wants to go to the store, it's how much money can I afford to spend? And she knows that I'll pay her taxes like a couple of cents, but that's it. So if we go to the Dollar Tree, which is her favorite, she'll ask me beforehand, how much money can I spend? And I'll say $2. And if she wants 3 items, I'm like, you only have $2. You have to make a choice. So now she knows. She might try to con me and try to get me to pay another $1, but it's more about the lesson of, okay, you've got to now make a choice. So if you only have $2 and you want 3 items, you better learn how to pick the most important 2 items that you want. So last week she actually she tricked me. So she told me that she wanted this pajamas, and she always likes pajamas, and I'm like, fine, you can get it. And it was $12.99 or something. And she's wanted some blue light glasses forever, and I just refused to buy them. So she sees them almost at the cash register, and she picks it up, and she looks at one. She's like, no, too expensive. She picks up another one, and it's like $9.99, and it's perfect. By the way, I don't even know where they are at this point. But she picks it up, and she's like, so can I get this instead? And I'm like, well, I'm like, yeah, it's $3 cheaper. Yeah, you can have it. You can have it. Like the next day she comes to me and she's like, I have a secret. I know how to get something. And I'm like, she's like, I have a negotiation tactic. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, yeah, just choose an item that's more expensive, and then you bargain down for the item that you really want.
I love it.
So I was tricked by my 9-year-old. Yes. So she
but I love it.
Yes, this is what I had to put up with. Like this is what I'm dealing with over here. All right.
This is the kind of power that you're giving this child when she's able to negotiate her salary.
Yes.
That's exactly how it is done.
Yes.
And I love also that you're allowing her to make choices. I think oftentimes as parents, you want this, you just give it. But saying, okay, you got X amount to spend that. That's it. You know, I think the ceiling is important because it also gives the concept that you cannot spend more than what you make, right?
Exactly. And money is not like an unlimited resource.
Exactly.
Right? We still have bills to pay. And I'm like, you want to be able to go on vacations, right? We can't do what such and such is doing. You want to be able to do all these things. We can't do everything. And so she understands. And so even her now, she uses her conscience to say, okay, I can't necessarily ask for this because I've already had that.
Yes.
Love it. Love it. We have 2 more questions. Actually, I thought it was 1. Somebody just drop another question because I really want these tips. So let me ask. One person was asking, Denise was asking, Kaysian, you spoke about Dave Ramsey. Do you recommend his resources? What do you say?
So I think it's a great starting point. Right? I don't agree with everything he says, but it's a great starting point. If you're starting from scratch and you need either an inexpensive or a way to kind of get you to a starting point, yes, by all means, go ahead. But I don't, as a financial advisor, there are some things that I would do differently. So I wouldn't necessarily, wholeheartedly say, yes, he's the expert on all things.
Right.
There are different things, but again, from a starting point, it's a great starting point.
Great. And Maricela asked the question, how does emotional hang-ups affect our spending habits and ability to save?
This is where we have to control ourselves, right? And get to the root of why we're spending, right? Because our maybe it's based on, or money history.
Mhm.
And if you think about it, all of us have a money history, and something that's been coming up. And I've got a couple of book resources if you guys want to hear them. But it's like, what's your money why, right? And why is money important to you? And don't just say freedom or whatever else. Like, really dig into why is money important to you, right? And I did this exercise for myself this week, and money is important to me because I want the flexibility at 7 o'clock in the morning now to be able to sit and cuddle with my daughter. For a very long time, I was dropping her off by 7:15 at school, or even before that, and picking her up at 6:15. Now, because of, and only God gets this credit, because of the choices that I'm making now in my professional life, at 7:15, I can still be on the couch with her, cuddling and having quiet time. So for me, that's a huge why behind why I need to have money, because I want to be able to do these things with her and for her.
Yes.
I love it.
Thank you. All of our money whys will be different. I asked a friend, and his was, I want to be able to buy what I want without worrying that I'm going to not have money. Right. So it's incredibly important. Norca's why is going to be different from Trisha's. It's going to be different from Shonda's. It's going to be different from mine. But for you to explore, why is it important? It might be something that goes back to something that you experienced as a child. You don't even recognize how it affects you now. Look at, and I'm doing Noom, right? And Noom is eating, but it's the same thing regarding the psychology of how we think about money as we apply it to the rest of our lives. Right.
Yeah. So let's go to the tips, Kaysian. Basic finance practices that every woman should know and follow. So we can take out our notebooks. That was the time. Take notes, everybody.
So I actually did this for another presentation, and I just thought, yeah.
I'm sorry. Before we go, I have my book. It's my career book.
I'm so glad you brought your book today.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right.
But
so I'll go slowly. Slowly. So I did this presentation for another thing, and I only had 10 minutes, so it was perfect. So I had to come up with like top 10 things.
Yes.
Be a good steward of your finances. Being a good steward means paying attention to all of it, right? And I'm going to get into that more. Number 2, pay attention to your finances. What is your income, and how are you spending? Because if you're always spending more than your income, you're always going to be in the red.
Wow.
Number 3, create a budget. A budget is not restricting, it is freeing. So when I create my budget, all right, I'm going to create a budget. A budget is not restricting, it is freeing. So in my budget, I have allocated a certain dollar amount for monthly clothing expenses for both me and my daughter. So when I go into the store, I don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, I can't afford. Like, no, this is a part of my budget, and I know I can spend up to a dollar amount and still be okay because I've planned for it. So you see now freedom comes into it, where I can spend and I know what my limit is. And I don't have to go crazy, right? And you don't have to do it on a monthly basis. You can take the number that you estimate over the course of the year and divide it by 12 and put that in your number. But we all need to wear clothes, right? We can't go out there naked.
You see the budget word. People don't like the budget word.
So you can call it budget. You can call it cash flow.
Spending plan.
You can have any kind of fancy name you want, but make sure you have it. Make sure you have it. All right. Number 4, try to save and create an emergency fund. And I said this before, that got blown out of the water. 3 months if you're a couple, and 6 months if you're a single. So Emergency fund is your basic necessities. It's not the going out, it's not the travel, it's not the anything that you can do without for a certain amount of time. It's the food, it's the rent, it's the light, it's the water. That you should have 3 to 6 months of saved and not invested.
Kaysian, would you please repeat the 3? Because when you say 3 months for couples, there are people who are single with families
Single
that
parents,
do
right?
not classify as couples.
That's a
So
great point. So you probably should look at it.
3 months family, 6 months singles, or how?
So figure out if it's only you alone that has the income and you're responsible for all of it. We're going to put you in a single category. So the reason I say couple is because if one of you loses your job, there's somebody else who's providing an income.
That's why I asked the question. So
if you don't have that, I'm about to launch into patois. It's you alone. You alone.
So the variable here is if you are responsible for everything, you need more savings.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Because you need a longer window to be able to find a job in case
something
you
happens.
Lose your job last year. Right.
Here's a good comment here. Nikisha said, make sure your budget is written down. A budget in your head is just numbers floating around. Because I have a budget here. I have a budget here.
It's true. So one of the most incredible things that have happened
is good for the soul.
We're not going to judge, honey. But when you have the numbers floating around in your head, it's going to be easy to write them down.
No, but then you're like, what?
When did that happen?
So yes, write it down. You can do, there are lots of resources. Mint is one that I see other people using. I don't use it personally. I'm my good old Excel spreadsheet with all my line items and how much money I combination of can afford to spend or need to spend.
Okay, so let's stop here. Somebody's asking, are we talking about 3 times what I spend monthly? Brenda, are you asking this for saving?
Yeah, the emergency fund.
Right, 3 times what I spend monthly.
Yes, and that's what I mean. I remember that I clarified, right? So monthly of your necessities, not everything, because you can do without going out to the restaurant. You can do without buying clothes for a certain amount of time, but you still need to eat. You just don't need to go to the restaurant to eat.
Right.
You
Excel spreadsheets.
Listen, I told you I'm an Excel girl. So I have an Excel spreadsheet that I have not just set it and forget it. I go back to every few months and look to make sure that that's how I'm spending the way I said I was going to spend. And if not, what do I need to tweak and why?
Okay.
Okay. Number 5. I need actually 2 minutes. Can you guys just keep talking for 2 minutes? I'm going to jump off for 2 seconds.
No, not a problem. Not a problem.
So the thing with this, what is not a myth is that we don't like to talk about money.
Right.
We don't. Okay, let me reframe. What is not a myth is that I don't like to talk or think about money, and I'll tell you why.
Why does it come from? Right.
It feels restrictive. It feels like I am limiting myself.
Yes.
And you have this saying like, I'm working hard. I should be able to do what I want. Confession is good.
I was just gonna say that's what it is. That you feel like you're working so hard. Can I buy myself a pair of shoes?
Yes, because you're like, really, I can't afford after all this hard work, and I'm not doing this, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing this, and I still can't. But I still have to write down everything. So it feels limiting, and that's why I don't like it. So this idea of budget being freedom is foreign to me. It's really it's not computing.
Don't make it unforeign to you. Unforeign. All right, I heard you. We're gonna localize it for you. So when you've written it down, right, and you know what you can afford to spend, all of a sudden that says, "Ooh, is this in my budget? I can actually afford to do this."
Yeah, but the answer is usually no.
but that's it. No. But see, if you
Yes,
if you put those things in that are important to you, and that's why I tell you that you can't spend on everything.
yes.
You can't spend like Norca spends, right? The Norca situation is different.
Yes.
And you can't spend like how Shonda spends because her
Yes.
situation is different.
Mhm.
So you have to choose the things that are important to you,
Yes. Mhm.
right? And look at what you can afford to do.
Yeah.
And I know we're going to get into another thing.
Right. Let me give you these 3 comments before we go into tip number 5, because I'm actually posting them also here so that people can have it both on Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah.
Says she's proud of herself. She used the Every Dollar app to create a spending plan this week. It was so empowering to have a plan for her money. Good for you, Fiona. Good for you.
Yay, Dr. T.
Trisha?
Yeah.
Trisha?
I know her. I know
empowering.
her. Yeah, I'm gonna
It's
have to call her.
empowering.
Yes.
Brenda
Yes.
says, I track my spending in Excel and I've been spending only on necessities, and that is still a lot of money in savings.
Oh, Lord. Wow.
And Denise says, a budget is a fence. It keeps the wild animals away.
I feel alluded to.
It's like, why is she talking about you?
What
I'm
we
just
tend
kidding.
to forget is that our budget plan should include the things we like, as long as we can afford them. Shoes, traveling, buying gifts.
I've said that.
Yes.
Yes. She
Yes.
did say that.
I've said exactly that. If
Yes.
you put those things in, because like y'all, I got a budget for travel. I got
Yes.
the budget for travel. Travel takes priority over a whole lot of other things,
Mhm.
right?
So this is my husband confession, because I'm always like, you're too cheap. Here's what he said. You just liberated him.
Listen, my mother had a joke, right? I'm a CPA, and she would call me a cheapest person alive, and I'm like, yep. But guess what? This cheapest person alive can afford to go on 3 to 4 vacations a year. Because I don't spend. I'm not trying to keep up with the Joneses. I don't care what the Joneses are doing, and that is freedom right there. So I get to choose and spend my money how I want to spend it, and not because I'm trying to compete with Norca. Right?
Yes.
That's not important to me.
See, Pastor Richards knows why he sits in the pink room.
So that
Oh,
means like, I got some
this was the
information.
Oh man.
Oh, well.
Oh, so let me get back to
Number 5.
Yes, my number 5. Once you have exceeded your emergency fund amounts and have no immediate big expenses, start investing.
Ooh.
Don't have your money sitting in the bank. Bank don't give no interest, right? So once you have exceeded your emergency fund amount and have no immediate big expenses, start investing.
That order is important, I think.
Oh, it's extremely important.
Because some people want to start investing before they have the funds. We won't buy the car that's needed, even though ours is 30 years old, because I'm going to invest in Bitcoin. I'm just saying.
Listen. You're stepping on my toes and get like this is a sore subject for me. Okay, this is a very sore subject. You need to crawl before you can walk, and walk before you can run. And too often people are trying to run, and they don't have the fundamentals.
Yes.
Right. And so, yes, it's a sore subject for me
So
because
the order.
there are so many things that need to be done before you get to this point. Come on. My kid wants to say hi. So y'all have met her with her stories.
Hi.
I love her here.
Thank you. My friend does it. No.
Kaysian, somebody's asking her about Elevest.
Oh, yeah. So Elevest is a woman's run financial. Now they have different things. I think it's Sally Crawchek or something like that. That's another program. There are lots of different ways that you can get investment solutions, right? It's choosing the one that works for you. And even if you sign up just for their new newsletter without buying anything, you'll get a lot of information. So there are lots of blogs out there that give you really good, solid guidance. Even if you're not at the stage where you're hiring someone yet, it's about learning first. And there are a ton of good resources out there. Number 6, If you have credit card debt, look at paying down the ones with the highest interest rates first. If you have credit card debt, look at paying down the ones with the highest interest rates first. And this is one of the areas that we differ from Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey will tell you to pay the smallest dollar amount first so that you can get a win, and then you can use that, and he calls it the snowball effect, right? So it depends. Like, I'm going to look at the one that's going to cost you more in interest and do that analysis, as opposed to telling you just to pay the smallest one. So the psychological win is great, but I also want you to focus on the one that's costing you a lot of money over time.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 7, take advantage of your companies, and I'll say the 401k plan or the 403b plan, but I'll say
retirement
plans, general category, and make sure that it is invested for your risk tolerance and amount of time until you retire or will need to take the money out. So if your company is offering you money through a 401k plan, just for you putting your own money in, please take it. Please take it. That's free money. Every year that you do not do that, you're giving the money, basically, you're leaving the money on the table. And the difference between, especially when you're starting young in your early 20s, like, it can be substantial if you wait till 30 or 40 for compounding of interest. Okay. So please, even whatever you can afford to do, you'll be surprised how this money adds up. And I told you, when I started at 23, when my friend Izzy sat me down and he's like, save $50 a pay period. And I did that. Like, y'all. When I told my friend to do that, when I learned it, I shared it with my friend, and I could not have envisioned where I am now. But even then I was giving advice. I'm like, well, my friend told me to do that. You should do that too. And he's like, Kaysi, when I went to buy my house, I had to smile and thank you, because those dollar amounts that I saved out of every paycheck, it automatically came out. He wasn't thinking about it, but he was able to buy his house. Right? So we don't think it's a lot while it's happening, but over time, you're making real progress. But y'all got to let it stay in there too. You can't just save it and then take it back out, because that don't work.
Really?
I'm talking about you again, aren't I? Sorry, Trisha. I didn't mean to. All right, I'm going to go on to number 8 because I didn't want to talk about you.
Denise asked something here. She says, there's something called the rule of 72.
Yeah. So, gosh. I think I know what it's like. The time that it takes for money to like double. I think it's the rule of 7. Maybe it might be 7 years for your money to double. So I think it's the rule of 7, something to that effect. Okay. So that was a question. Okay. Yeah. So it's really about the amount of time that it takes for your money to double. I don't know how true this statistic was, but I saw it probably earlier on. So I follow a lot of finance sites on Instagram, and it said it took him 22 plus years to get to 100,000. And he said it took him 10 months after that to get to 200,000.
Wow.
And I'll tell you that that's quite possible, right? Wow. Because if you're talking about the markets from last year and what that has done, so growing anything takes a long time, but the more you have, the quicker it starts to compound interest and investment returns, especially if the markets are going up. So it's hard work to start. It's harder work if you don't start, actually.
Yes.
Where are we?
8.
8. If you do not have access to a 401k plan, because I just told you to make sure that you take advantage of it, create your own with an IRA. And y'all, please, please, please make sure that it's not just sitting in a bank account, because you're doing yourself a disservice. So if you're going to open an IRA, don't do it at your local bank, because all it does is sit in cash. Go to, like, I don't know, a Fidelity, a TD Ameritrade, or whatever else. And hopefully they have things to guide you as to how to invest it. But don't just have your money sitting in a bank. You're doing the right thing by opening the account and contributing to it, but you're doing yourself a disservice by not having it invested over time. That's where the bigger benefit comes from.
So let me ask you this. There are many people who watch the Pink Room who do not work at a job but are entrepreneurs, so would not have a 401k that the job would be putting money into. Is this their...
Girl, you can do even better than that.
Yeah.
The government, because they're so generous, allows different type of accounts, and you have to work with your accountant for this one, right? An accountant, a good accountant, let me say that. Well, let me step back and say it again. A good accountant will be able to guide you, because there are certain tax benefits that you can have. And even if you're not getting tax benefits, you can get later tax benefits, or if you're not getting immediate tax benefits. But you need someone who's not just going to do your taxes and not give you any guidance, right? So if you're a business owner, get a real accountant or get a good accountant, because you might be paying more, but you're either saving yourself or getting the advice that you need that's going to get you so far above where you can be.
Yeah.
Right? So you have other retirement vehicles that are available to you as a business owner. That's even better than just having a regular IRA.
So that's an 8B.
That's an AB.
Tip 8B.
Yeah, listen, we probably gone like A, B, C, D, like all the way, right?
So let me ask this question. Denise asked, what is the difference between a Roth IRA and a regular one?
Okay, so
let me pause here. This was supposed to be the basics. We're supposed to bring Kaysian on for the deeper stuff. We are diving in, so okay, let's go.
Listen, we don't do basics around here. We don't, we gotta give it all. So the difference, remember, I actually just said it, and I purposely said it the way I did. You either get tax benefits now or you get tax benefits later. Okay, remember I just said that, Trisha? Were you paying attention?
I was still thinking about the taking out the savings after I put them in part of the
all right. Okay, so to answer the question, a traditional IRA is you put the money in now and you get the tax deduction now. Okay, it grows, hopefully it grows nicely over time. And when you start taking it out after 59 and a half, because you don't want to pay a 10% penalty, then you have to pay the taxes. The government said, you know what, we're going to give you this tax benefit now when you're my age now. But when and it grows, but any amount that you take out is going to be taxed. Got it? Okay, cool. Now for the Roth, you don't get the tax benefit now. You can put the money in, but there's no tax deduction. But guess what? That money grows and grows and grows. And when you take it out after 59 and a half and some other circumstances that allow you to take it out prior to, there are no tax consequences. So the Roth, if you can, yeah, Trisha, I see your face, yeah. So the Roth is actually a better vehicle depending on if you qualify for it, because there are certain restrictions for it. And if y'all have a Roth 401k that your company automatically offers, that's a great place to be. So, and there's no answer that says you have to do one or the other. You can do a combination of the two. So you can do a combination of your regular 401k plan and your Roth 401k. So you're getting some tax benefit now and not on the Roth. But when it comes time to take it out, you have different items that are going to be taxed differently. So you can manage your tax liability in a different way. Yeah, we're getting really complicated over here.
Yeah, we need a class. I have two questions here. Maricela asks, how much percentage should she save for a 403B?
Yeah, so I get it.
She says if she borrows money from her 403B, she borrows. Oh, I do borrow money from my 403B, meaning that I pay it back. Okay.
So she asked two questions. Those are two very different questions.
Right.
Okay, so I can't tell her how much to save for her 403B plan. And that's going to be the answer for everyone. it depends on what you can afford to do while you're still living. Your 403b is meant to help you with your future, and as best as possible, don't borrow from your 403b because you're losing the growth opportunities. So this is why it's important to like manage both your personal savings and your retirement savings, because if you have personal savings, you won't necessarily need to borrow from the 403b. However, there are times that it makes sense. I didn't say that out loud, but in necessary situations that you have to borrow from your 403b, make sure you pay it back. If you don't pay it back, and if you have to leave, there are certain situations, at least I know from the 401k plan, if you don't pay it back within a 5-year span or something, it's considered a distribution, and then you're paying taxes and penalties and all kind of things. So yeah, it gets complicated, and you have to know your own financial situation and understand the mechanics of it. But if like in circumstances, I'll tell you that I've borrowed from my 401k plan for home purchase, and it's been the thing that allowed me to get to the goalpost of owning a home, but I've also paid it back. So in certain situations, it's understanding what your choices are and making wise and informed decisions about them.
Or get a financial advisor.
Yeah.
So, exactly.
Yeah.
So do we have 2 more tips, or
yeah. So Trisha was distracting me. It was Trisha's
Sorry.
fault. All right. And this one is a pet peeve of mine. Pet peeve, big one. Number 9, unless you understand why you want or need an annuity, that should not be the first thing someone tries to sell you. Okay? Far too many people own annuities that they have no business owning annuities. All right. So if your financial advisor tells you that you go there to learn about finances or whatever else, and the first thing that they tell you without knowing anything about you is to invest in an annuity, y'all run. Wrong person. Number 10, when you're working with an advisor, make sure that they are looking out for you and not just for themselves. They will do this by asking questions about your goals and seeking to really understand what you're looking to accomplish. And so when I think it was Marissa who just asked how much she should invest in her 403b, and I told her I couldn't answer because I did not know enough about her situation. That should be the question. No, the person should not be telling you that you need to put 10% in without understanding the dynamics of what your life is and what else you need. They have to get an understanding of what you can afford to do and what else is going on and all those other situations before they tell you what you ought to be doing. Those were number 10. Those were all 10.
Nice. So Maricela, I'm going to ask you to look back at the recording because there was a question that she asked about emotional hangups to money that you did answer. Yeah. I'm going to ask you to go back to that. There's just one question that I want to ask you before we move on to one of the final slides. There's always this big argument in churches about husband and wife need to have the same bank account. Woman shouldn't have a bank account by herself. Blah, blah, blah. And inviting you today, that was one of the things that came up for one of it. She wanted to know what your take was on that. I have my own opinion, but what is your financial advice on that?
And you gonna really ask me that question?
Yes.
Did you see Kaysian face?
My face has no behavior. I apologize. So you know what? It's what works for each couple, right? And please do not let the church at large make a decision for what works for your family.
That's right.
Right? They're not in your homes, they're not in your relationships, and they don't understand the mechanics. And if one person is a spendthrift and the other one is trying to save, y'all are always going to have headaches. And it's important, I will say this, to talk about money while you're dating and while you're courting and while you're doing while you're getting to know each other.
I love that.
Right? Because otherwise you're going to get into this relationship and it's going to be a headache for both of you because you both come from different perspectives as to how money is viewed. And so when one person wants to go spending and then the other person wants to save every dollar, that's going to be cause for marital strife. And we know that money is one of the top reasons for divorce. So when you talk about money before, you don't have to agree eye to eye on everything. But when you talk about it, you understand the perspectives that each of you are coming from. So if you choose to have one joint account that you pay everything out of, that's what you do. If you choose to have individual accounts and then a joint account that you pay out, that's what you do. If you choose to keep your finances separately, that's what you do. There is no one right answer, in my opinion. I'm not speaking on behalf of the church, speaking on behalf of myself. In my opinion, that works. It has to be what works for you in your relationship.
I love your answer because that's exactly the way it has to be, right?
Can I ask a question though, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
So there's such a thing as financial abuse.
They're financial.
Right, of course.
There are all kinds of abuse.
Yes, no, but I'm going somewhere with the question.
Okay.
So it could be that it's like consent for sex. There are times when someone is not able to give consent even if they were asked, right? You're drunk, you can't give consent because you can't.
Right.
So if someone is living in a situation where there's abuse, does that person have the agency to be able to say no to a solution that is not in their best interest? What can they? Yeah, sorry.
You're getting into like a deeper question, a very valid one that's really out of my realm of expertise.
Okay.
But I've actually heard of one, I may have read it somewhere, a woman who she was in such a situation, an abusive relationship, where she was only allowed to buy certain things. And what she did, she bought socks. And then she would return the socks and squirrel the money away. And that's how she escaped. Right?
Wow.
So it's coming up with, and I'm getting goosebumps talking about this, but it's coming up with the situation that's going to give you the escape of what you need to do. Right? And unfortunately, like, you just have to get creative and understand that there are times when there is financial abuse, and it's not just financial abuse. There's usually a whole lot of other abuses.
Yes, that's just one component.
Right?
But that's why
it's not going to stand alone.
That's why I asked the question. I've known women whose husbands don't work and they have to surrender their entire check to the husband and then get money back to buy feminine hygiene products.
Exactly.
How is that something that works? So
exactly.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
You know what is powerful about what you're saying here, Kaysian, and to Tricia's question, that with prayer and creativeness we can find some kind of way, right? Because that thing about the socks gave me goosebumps too, because I never thought about that. But that makes a lot of sense. But the most important thing I believe that you said is that we need to have the conversation about money when we're dating. We should not marry to find out how that person thinks about whether I can have my own account and spend my own
how much debt the person is in,
or how much debt, because that's another thing. I've heard of people getting married and they find out this guy has debt that is the cost of a house, and they never, we need to have these conversations pre-marriage, and that is why you need to find a competent premarital counselor that's going to deal with that, because you need to know what are his thoughts and patterns with money, because you're going to vinculate yourself with this person in a way that may create some entanglement that afterwards, how do you untangle from this, right? So it's critical. It's critical that we start empower young women early on to know, listen, it's not about the kissy and the lovey-dovey and the kitty. Well, it's about that money conversation. That's an important conversation that needs to be prioritized.
It needs to be equated to, during this pandemic, everybody's been talking about self-care and finding balance. It needs to be equated to our physical, our mental, and our spiritual health. Financial health needs to be right along in that category, because we need money to live.
Exactly.
No matter how much people say you can live off the grid, you still need money.
You see why this question is valid here?
Yes.
I said the pastor that gave my husband and I premarital counseling was very upset at me because I insisted to keep my personal account as well as a joint account with my spouse. I've heard this over and over in churches. I've heard women saying, "You're foolish if you make him have his own account. Why not? He won't buy a pair of shoes and he think he got the money. Why should he ask me? I don't think I should be in that conversation. You got the money to buy a pair of shoes? Buy a pair of shoes."
But it's the same. It's the reverse for you, right?
Yeah.
Why do you need to ask him permission if you want to buy a pair of shoes?
Well, I say him because you know me.
You're not asking nobody for nothing.
Nobody for no permission.
But I'm talking. I mean, generally, right?
Yes.
It's the same thing, and this is it comes back to like your budgets, right? Because you can each have your own budget of what you need to do. You don't need nobody's permission to go buy a pair of shoes.
And you should have your joint goals as a couple. As a couple, we want to buy a house. What are our goals? Let's work on that.
But that's a larger conversation, and I think that's why this is really important.
That's why we need to start early.
Yes, and that's why we need to spend time with this. And there are some that may say, "Well, are you spending a whole Pink Room live session talking about money?"
Oh yeah.
Money can be the conversation starter, but the conversation about money ends up touching every other aspect of your life, whether you're single or whether you're married. And that's the reason why I asked the other question, because sometimes we feel that money becomes a topic of conversation if and when you get married, and you don't think about it otherwise. And that's not true either. So when we're having all of these sessions for younger women, and we always gear them towards how to prepare yourself and where you're getting married, and forget that there could be 20 years between the retreat and the wedding, we need to be talking about these things. It doesn't matter what your marital status is. You need to know certain things, triggers about why you're spending the money, going to Maricela's question. How to plan all of these 10 tips you gave, because you're going to retire, whether you're single, you're married, widowed, divorced, or whatever. How are you managing that? And to disentangle this conversation from marriage is very important as well.
Right. So here is a pastor saying that when he does his premarital counseling, he has the couple create a budget together as if they were already married. So they're able to see the cost and understand what the merging of their lives are going to look like. Listen, we're 15 minutes past the time, but the ticker has not gone down. People have not left the conversation, which is critical. Sylvia is saying, I believe that as long as you're in a marriage, it's our money, even when only one of you work. If that is clear in both of you, right? Whatever works for your couple, what works for you may not work for Tricia, may not work for Shonda. What we're saying here is what we want to get away from is when we say to women in churches, and we say to women, as Eloisa shared, you have to have a joint account, because if you don't do, you're sinning. No, there's no such thing. You can have that. You can have your own account. You can decide you want to only have a joint or you want to have separate. That needs to be something that is decided by the couple, and the church should not get in there. Absolutely. So let's go to this final point, because I know that people are not leaving, but I wanted us to talk a little bit about streams of income, right? That we cannot only depend on a salary. Such another very important conversation. Is it realistic or aspirational? We hear people talk about 7 streams of income. What are your thoughts as a financial planner?
So actually, I only heard about the 7 streams of income from a friend in the last year or two. And I didn't even know that was a thing. Like I just knew that you go to work and you get an income. But I said God would have it that I became an author in 2018, selling books and stuff. And I'm like, all of a sudden that became another stream of income. I'm not like this big author, but this week I mentioned my book on my Facebook. I'm like, oh, I came up in the memory that I published it last year, and somebody went and purchased it, and another person purchased it. I'm like, wow, just talking about my book reminded people that I had a book, and they bought it. And for me, I thought, oh, that's actually another stream of income. And I don't know if it was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this book to get rich. That was never my intention. It was just for me, Walking in Obedience, right? Which is the name of the book.
Mm-hmm.
So without even
it's an excellent devotional, by the way.
Praise God.
Actually, I'm so sorry we didn't bring the link to put in the chat. It's an excellent devotional. So you give it to us afterward and we'll share it.
Thank you. So it's created another stream of income. It's not a ton of money by any means, but then probably can go to the supermarket and I don't have to use my regular money for the supermarket, right? So now it's the little places, it's using the gifts and talents that you've been given, and how do you make money off of it? I see you all wearing the same t-shirts, right? Somebody came up with a logo and now you have t-shirts. You could probably sell it. That's a stream of income, right? So what are the things that you're really good at? And you don't need to have 7 streams of income if you can't figure out 7 ways. Like you don't need to, you do need to have money because money is very important, but you shouldn't be stressing and killing yourself how to come up with 7 streams of income. So it's thinking about those things that come naturally. Are you a baker? Christmas is coming. Can you bake something and sell the thing that everybody tells you do so well? You take it for granted. I promise you, I'm not a baker. Nobody's going to be buying my black cake. I don't even know if I've ever made a black cake, right? So it's that thing that you do well and making it make money for you. That's a stream of income.
You know what I think is very important with the streams of income idea is that we detach and disabuse ourselves from this idea that we must be enslaved to the money that we get from that employer, and that's the only way we can survive, right? We need to realize that God gave us a lot of talent, and there are other things in our life. So you're a financial advisor. You write great devotional books. Who would have thought, right? God gave you that, right? And you use that to create another stream of income. And I think that's important. I think people, especially women, we get so tied up with the one thing, the job, the 9 to 5 that sucks us dry. And then we don't use our creative powers or the gifts that God gave us to our advantage also financially. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, I'll just add one more thing to that.
Go ahead.
So my title was not financial advisor when I worked for my previous corporate job, right? I was doing the role of financial advisor, but that was not my title. And God said, leave, and it's time to do something else. I'm like, but you mean I'm going to leave the paycheck that's been taking care of, like, you mean I'm going to, and God said, yeah, it's time. And I'm like, that don't make no sense. Yo, I told you that I'm divorced, and I told you that I'm a single mom, and I told you all this. That don't make no sense. But can I tell you, it's been the most incredible time. It's not been easy, right? Don't get me wrong. It's not been easy. And the income that was there before is not what it was now. But can I tell you, that thing I told you that I can be on the couch with her at 7:15 in the morning? Listen. So it's also trusting when it's time to do something different. And I'm not telling everybody to leave their corporate jobs or to leave their jobs. I'm not telling you that. Right? But you've got to know where you're being called to serve. And I count this as a privilege to come and sit with you now to share this vast knowledge. And I'm like, wait, when did I get this? Over time, and doing the thing and doing it consistently over time, now we can have meaningful conversations. And y'all might not be able to talk about finances, but Norca, you can talk about women's things, right? And that's the passion and what God has laid on your heart. And it's separate from the work that you do in the daytime, but you can still use that gift for what you do for the young, the people that you serve at, where you serve.
Right.
So now bringing our whole selves into what we do. And man, can I tell you, y'all see the glow?
Yes, we do.
There's some makeup, but there's a natural glow underneath there.
Yeah.
Bringing your whole self into what you do.
Right. And Denise mentioned brownies. I've tasted Denise brownies. I've never tasted brownies so good in my life. Denise, you got to package them things and sell them. They are good. So yeah, that's a stream of income right there. And I agree with you, Kaysian, that oftentimes we receive such knowledge that we can then empower others with. And it's such a beautiful thing. So to recap, because we have gone way past the time, but clearly this is a topic that everyone has enjoyed. I have people from all over the world telling me that this is good. Basic tools that we can use to empower our finances. So Kaysian, take it away. What are some basic things that we need? If we had to do a 1, 2, 3, what are the 1, 2, 3 that we all should have leaving this conversation?
Pay attention to your finances. Pay attention to where your money is going. And I'll let me see if I can just highlight. Be a good steward. I think that's number 1. Be a good steward and figure out what that means for you. Number 2, pay attention to your finances. What is your income and how are you spending it? And number 3, if you haven't already, create a budget. And again, I'm going to say this: a budget is not restricting; it is freeing. And I'll add, I guess, number 4. Figure out how to, if you're not making enough in your regular job, figure out how to increase your income, right? You have skills that, again, you're taking for granted. You don't realize that it's a skill, and do something with it. And you'd be surprised. And even if it's not the people who you think are closest to you who are going to support you, trust me, they're like, how many billions of people? A whole
Yes.
people,
Yes.
right?
Holy
Don't
papi.
always count on the people who are in your immediate circle to support you. Just do that thing that has been laid on your heart to go do. The thing that is coming to you right now as I'm talking, you're like, wait, I think I'm good at that. Go figure out how to do it. And you don't have to do it on a grand scale, but do something that's going to get you some additional income, and you'll be surprised.
Yeah, thank you so much. And the women are thanking you. People are talking about sewing. People are talking about making their gluten, whatever that is. If you were inspired today, we want to thank Kaysian. Kaysian, I affirm you. I have never heard, I mean, every time I hear you speak, there's always such wisdom that is enshrouded with the fact that you're a very spirit-led woman. So I appreciate that wholeheartedly. I always receive what you have to say. This will not be the first time. Clearly, our community of women want more of this.
Yep.
So we thank you so much for being with us. And even though our agenda is packed up to March, you'll be coming back at some point. Tracy and Shonda, your affirmations.
Absolutely. So even though I felt alluded to in many parts of this conversation,
I wasn't talking about you. I wasn't talking about your promise.
No, let me say this. Absolutely. We're so thankful that you came. And I know at least 5 people I specifically sent it to because of situations that are going on before this conversation. And I know now that it was for me as well. Every part of it, including God calling me to move in a different direction for a long time, and me saying I can't do it because of all these different things that, so thank you so much, not just for those of our friends who are watching Pink Room all over the world, like Norca said, but for me today, thank you. So
you're very welcome.
Oh yes, and Kaysian, thanks for bringing in such a laywoman term where we could just hear it and the most basic. It wasn't complicated, convoluted. You didn't need to have a PhD to comprehend it. I mean, your authentic style just made it so clear. And if those of us who've watched it, you may have known some of these things, or it just is a refresher. And like Nork, I look forward to having you come back again, because we can all have a check-in on our financial status. Like I said, it's just as important as our physical, our mental, and our spiritual health.
Thank you so much.
So, Kaysian, challenge in the chat. We need a boot camp. So you and I are going to have a conversation about having a For Real Women International Financing boot camp.
Yes,
listen, I saw that Hawaii post. I'm just going to put it out there. You know,
you could listen. You could go anywhere we go. You could come. You are invited. Trust me, you're invited. We are receiving you with open arms.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kaysian. I'm gonna just screen off as we give a final advice for today. But thank you so much for coming by, and it was time well spent. Absolutely, absolutely. So today I want to share with you the final advice for the night, which is our community checklist. And we want to remind you that there's no expiration date on achievement. Too many times we get discouraged and we get distracted and detracted because we believe my time has passed. I'm now in my 50s. I'm now in my 60s. I'm now in my 40s. I'm never going to find real love, or I'm never going to be able to get that degree, or I'm never going to open my business. I'm never going to buy my home. Whatever that thing is that we want to do, we always put in our minds expiration dates because we live in a society that kind of promotes youthfulness as the only time in life when you can achieve. We're here to tell you that there's no expiration date on achievement or on your dreams. If you have that thing in your mind that's been a burden on your heart and it's still in your mind that you want to achieve, we say to you, go for it, run for it, keep at it, because your time is now. Once you're ready to do it, everything in the universe is going to align and God will see you through. So do not let age, do not let circumstances, do not let anything stop you from achieving that thing that you want to achieve. And we want to, as I bring back my co-hostesses, share with you, we're actually sharing with you our pink room for the next two sessions.
Yeah.
So we're starting with November 27th.
I think they're backwards.
We're talking with women who are in business for themselves. And we have Dr. Tika Ann Haynes. She's a national director for Mary Kay. Lachelle Thornhill Boot, who owns Sugar Crush Girl Petite Confections, and Jewel Kimberly Jordan, who owns Jewel's Vintage Closet and is also a co-owner with her husband in R&J Cuisine. It's going to be an exciting conversation. You're going to learn from these women, some of them very young, and how it is that they achieve their dream of being in business and actually living off their businesses. So that is November 27th. We invite you to join us. And then on the 13th, which is not this Saturday, but the following one, we're going to be talking about the fake life, how social media has impacted our mental and social well-being, and what can we do to change this, right? So we have Dr. Allison Regis, Dr. Shauna K. Denham-Wilkes, and Dr. Lona Gordon. All three women have been on the pink room in the past.
Yes.
I've heard from them. They are women that are very knowledgeable. And this conversation is a conversation that we need to have. And we're inviting you to bring some of your younger women to the room. We've all heard about Facebook and Instagram and everything that's going on. Bring them to the room and let's see what we can learn in this conversation. Sean and Tricia, you want to say your goodbyes?
It was as usual. You think you're coming for something and you get so much more. So it's always good to be in the pink room.
That's right. We appreciate the support. Continue to come out and just join us.
Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you on the 13th.
And we'll see you next time in the pink room.
The Pink Room is a produced resource of For Real Women International, Inc., a non-profit organization with headquarters in New York and affiliates in the United States, Latin America, and the Caribbean. The views expressed here by hostesses and guests do not necessarily represent the philosophy of For Real Women International, its affiliates, members, and board of directors.